Everyone, I'm here with Trisha. I've interviewed her before. She was a police officer, and recently she got in touch with me and said we have a lot to talk about and that she left the police force. I said, don't tell me anything. Let's put it on a podcast and
Right.
just update me on everything going on. So thank you for being here today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So do you want to just catch everyone up on your background and kind of what got you to here?
Well, so I used to, in 2008, I joined police force. Uh, Sorry, I have a puppy running around. I actually used to work for Baltimore, and I left there last summer. I left there as a sergeant. And now I moved to the mountains in the country, and I'm loving it.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. So you went into the police force in 2018. Had you always wanted to be a
Oh,
police?
2008.
Oh, 2008. I mean, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
My timeline is completely all over.
Right.
I don't even know what year it is anymore since the
I
pandemic.
know, right?
But so was it something you always wanted to do your entire life and something that you were very passionate about, or is it something you fell into?
No, it actually wasn't. I went to college and I was in corporate America for a couple of years. And I mean, I don't come from a police family or like a military family really. So it was just something kind of, I guess, random. Just started being interested in it and applied to several agencies, and Baltimore got me first.
It's really interesting. You had told me that, because there's so many accusations of racism within the police force, of sexism, of all this stuff.
Right.
And you had told me, hey, my honest opinion, this was back when we spoke a while ago,
Right.
was your honest opinion was that, sure, there may be problems, but it's not as pervasive as people make it out to be.
Right.
I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, just to clarify your position on those issues.
On racism?
Racism, sexism, has anything there changed, or do you feel the same way?
Like I said, I never, it's hard to kind of really, I've never seen blatant racism. I've heard stories about it, honestly, but I've never seen it myself. I can't say any incidents where I've witnessed racism, but I've had friends tell me stories, but sexism, probably a little bit, honestly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that exists, sadly.
Male-dominated profession, so.
Yeah, it's a heavily male-dominated profession. It's a profession where there's a lot of stress, a lot of tension, a lot of, you need to be hyper physical.
Right.
So I could see that being something that does exist. I mean,
right.
It's just fascinating to get your perspective, just because of kind of how the left always plays the identity politics aspect of it. Like, oh, if you're Black, if you're female, everyone's against you, and the police are racist, and you were in it. You were in the thick of it, fully being a police officer for many years. And when we spoke, I was, you came at me and were like, no, it's not as pervasive as everyone says. It's not on that level.
Right. I mean, everything's different. Like I said, since I'm Black, I don't think wouldn't be something that would be shown around me, naturally. Like, like I don't think like a white guy is going to, blatantly call me or someone in front of me. I don't think so. But I don't know.
Yeah. Well, okay, but that's fair. I mean, that's an interesting. So your experience overall as a police officer was one that was overall inclusive in terms of, your personal experience.
I would say so, but I mean, I know other people have had experiences, so I don't want to discount that. I just can't think of anything, honestly, you just never know. You don't know. This stuff tends to be hidden. So someone that doesn't like me because I'm female, doesn't like me because I'm Black, or they don't like Black people, they're not really going to let it show like that. You know what I mean? It tends to be very subtle. So we have people that, they have their thinking. They file EEOC complaints because maybe it is because you're female, or you're being asked to do this because you're female, or you're being asked to do this because you're Black. A lot of this stuff is very latent. Everyone has unconscious biases. It's just, and they're unconscious. So it's hard to.
No, I agree with you. I think that's one of the interesting things I think is worth debating. Ben Shapiro always says, he goes, if it's unconscious, and, how racist can it really be? In other words, if someone is so unaware of their own biases,
right,
and there is no intent to do you harm based on the color of your skin, but then we've kind of, at least at a minimum, I feel, progressed to a certain point. I think it's interesting when you say, of course, they're not going to say it to my face because I'm Black or because I'm a female. actually in some weird way does show that we've at least progressed to the point
right.
That's unacceptable. Right. Like most people are just aware, don't do that.
Right. Well, we can think about how time has progressed from, let's say, the civil rights era, where, yeah, it was very blatant because, you know, you had torches being burned or crosses being burned, people's lawns. It was very pervasive and very overt. But of course, the laws started changing and we progressed as a society. You had to drive, it's been driven underground. I mean, you still have blatant, you know, you have the alt-right movement. They're very candid about how they feel. They don't care, you know, so, but everyone else, you know, it's probably just been beaten into like, yeah, a more subtle level where they know it's not proper now. It's not socially proper to show it. It's not socially proper to call someone the N-word, you know, especially when you have a camera or phone everywhere and they'll just email it to your job and get you canceled, you know? So, but it's probably other certain ways.
Yeah, of course it exists. I mean, all forms of those things exist. Sadly, they'll continue to exist.
Right.
My personal opinion is that they do continue to get better and better and better. I mean, I'm not a fan of identity politics. I feel like that sometimes pulls it back in the other direction.
Right.
Where now there's a recent thing I saw where people are calling for more segregation. They wanted to make a white caucus for white people to have an exclusive space to go on their journey for anti-racism, to learn how to not be racist. And this is by progressives. This is by left-wing progressives calling for segregation for white people to have an anti-racist space so they can go on their own journey to be less racist. I'm like, this is the exact opposite of what you should be doing.
Right. You don't want to, you don't want to do that. I mean, I don't know. I was reading all these weird articles about, of course, down during the George Floyd time, it was all this stuff, this white guilt stuff coming out about, oh yeah, you know, your 4-year-old might be a racist because you're teaching them to be. And it's like, what? Kids are like the least racist of all, really. They're smarter than us, usually.
Yeah.
They don't care. They don't see that. Racism is learned. It's not something you are born with. It's taught.
Yeah, and a lot of the time, I feel like we teach it unintentionally when we go in that direction where it's like everything becomes about identity. So it's interesting when you had emailed me and said, hey, I just want to give you an update. I'm not on the police force anymore. I'll be honest. My immediate reaction was like, did something happen? You know, was it something around like race? Was it something around gender? Was it?
No, it's more something around just nonsense that happens in any police agency. And there it's especially, and it's all kinds of things from how they run and how I don't want to trash them. I work there, you know, I love them, but it's a hard department to work for. I'll just say it like that in many ways, because now, you know, of course, it's a very liberal city. The city administration is very liberal. You have a councilman who openly hates police, openly. Like he was tweeting that we should tear down the police memorial and put up a police or memorial to victims of police shootings or police violence, something crazy. So that's the kind of city that we're ruled by. Okay, and the kind of people.
You were an officer for over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
It was a huge part of your life.
Right.
You admit that there were problems within the police force, but what actually ruined it for you was the fact that it's gone too far left to the point of just police hatred and far left ideology encroaching into the police, you know, the way you could actually do your job. Is that what it is?
Well, because the DOJ, ever since Freddie Gray, so I worked the riots in 2015. So Freddie Gray, when that happened, that, you know, it was a big part of that year. And then the DOJ came, and, you know, ever since then, it's just been, you know, de-escalate that we get this weird training, everything they want de-escalated. You know, they changed our use of force policy, to like ridiculous levels of tedium. And it's just, you know, it's been hard. It might have improved the department in certain ways, like threw money at it. But I mean, I don't know. I just felt like with the political environment and them, it just made things more tedious where, you know.
Yeah, they were actually working against the police instead of for the police. Like
you actually that's a pervasive feeling. It's like the city administration and the way they rule and the fact that the crime rate is astronomical, they're more adversarial towards its officers than actual criminals.
Yeah, the
and
people trying
officers can be criminals too, don't get me wrong. So yeah, we've had officers that are going out robbing people, planting drugs, and I understand that, but I just mean the criminal element in the city that we're trying to fight. But they're more worried about things, we have 20 page PowerPoints about how to not harass transsexuals. And I'm not saying we shouldn't or we should do that, but it's like, okay, we get it. We understand that. Why do we keep having to have these trainings on, this stuff? We understand we have to be diverse and inclusive. Like, it's not, but they like beat it into you.
It's fascinating because like this kind of hyper left ideology or far left ideology, you talk about the alt-right before, they're a problem.
Right.
I guess you would call it the far left, is equally dangerous because it creeps into these type of things. Like it creeps into medicine. It creeps into what prisons people go to. So in other words, if someone is trans female, but was a male rapist, they go to a female prison. It happened. Right. And they ended up raping 24 more women and sexually assaulting 24 more women. Happened in the UK. Yeah, a male rapist that identifies female was put in a female prison and sexually assaulted 24 more women. But it also is happening exactly in this story. Like, I'm so happy you came on because I don't know what goes on behind the scenes in the police force. I hear stories from friends of mine who are police officers saying, man, it's getting so bad. We're not even allowed to control people anymore when we take them down on the ground because they're saying the use of force is too dangerous. You're almost leaving the only option to be shooting the person. They tell me, I'm like, I don't know what to do.
See, that's the point, and that's what it's getting to. And that's why it's, that's part of the reason a lot of officers are disillusioned because they don't know what to do. So, a lot of them are just scared to do anything. And that's dangerous for them. It's dangerous for everybody because, now everything's a use of force. Like, at some point you have to use force. They say de-escalate. Okay, we don't have an infinite timeline here. So how far do you want us to go with this? And I get it. Yeah, you want to try to talk someone down. Sometimes it's not feasible to. And it's, you think about that shooting with the taser. What that was what? Georgia? No, Rayshard Brooks. Was that Atlanta?
Was it Rayshard Brooks? It wasn't Rayshard Brooks. I know which one you're talking about, when he was in the car and he got out and then the guy, he stole the cop's taser and shot him.
Yeah, that was Rayshard Brooks, wasn't it?
Maybe, I'm not sure. I thought Rayshard Brooks was the one who got shot in the back.
Oh, I don't know then. I think that the Atlanta one where you only have seconds to make this decision, like less than a second. And I've been in a shooting. I know how it is. So you have less than a second to make this decision. And the fact that state's attorney, he, the week before or 3 weeks before, he charged officers when they were protesting / acting a fool down, not the officers, the, people protesting and getting wild, for pointing a taser at someone. He said, this is aggravated assault, pointing a taser. Then with the officer, he said, it's not. 3 weeks later. So how do you have that type of discrepancy in a public official?
Oh yeah,
he's applying the law at his leisure.
3 weeks.
So it's either aggravated assault or it's not. First of all, taser is not only, it may not have stunned him. It won't necessarily, or it doesn't only stun. The prongs could have hit him in the eye. It shoots prongs that are supposed to pierce your skin. It could have done anything.
Not only that, I mean, it could have hit him. He could have fell to the ground from being tased. Right. The guy could have come over, taken his gun and shot him in the head multiple times. That's happened. It's not like that hasn't happened.
Right.
And actually it was switched from being a deadly weapon. Tasers were considered a deadly weapon. And then 3 weeks later, not when that happened.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. You're right. Yeah. A taser's not as a deadly weapon. Then now it's not. So, it's a hard job because in seconds you got to choose what to do. And if you do the wrong thing, they Monday morning quarterback you and say, well, you should have done this. Okay, maybe I should have, but I don't have a lot of time to make that decision when someone's attacking me. And, the funny thing is with how tasers have gotten, people used to love the taser. They used to love it because, it stopped us from having to shoot a lot of people. But now because certain people have died, and keep in mind, a taser is less lethal. It doesn't mean non-lethal. If you have health problems or something, sorry, we don't know that. But now taser use, they restrict that a lot. Like, pointing a taser at someone in our policy used to be, nothing. You didn't write anything on it. Now it's considered a level 1 use of force, just pointing it.
So so you kept seeing these escalations and escalations and escalations. I find it interesting that, so I interviewed you under Trump
Yeah.
Not to get overly political.
Right.
But you seem positive about where, you know, things could go. You were worried. You said, you know, all this rhetoric is dangerous, but you did feel like the president had your back. And then it was interesting that only a couple of weeks after Biden's elected, you hit me up and you're like, I'm done being a police officer.
Well, yeah. I mean, if Trump had won, I might have regretted it. I was done before that. I left last summer, but yeah, I might have regretted it. But now it's just going to get so much worse. It will. You know, they're already trying to, you know, say, I keep keeping up with this hearing and they say, well, he incited a riot. And I'm like, I don't think so. I read the speech. I mean, he was that's how he talks. But you've had leftists that do the same thing at protests and they actually knock down statues. So what's, you know, how is this?
Well, you even had federal buildings occupied, multiple federal buildings under the protests that we had for all year long. You had the White House, people were throwing rocks and trying to breach the White House. You had a federal building firebombed, police stations firebombed.
They were throwing firecrackers, Molotov cocktails. Yeah, it was chaos. And so now under Trump, I know I get it. That was a very serious incident. People died. You've had several, unfortunately, Capitol police officers since then have committed suicide. I don't know if it's a reference to that, but having worked a situation kind of like that, like the riots of 2015, and knowing, you know, it can be difficult, but I know that was a cluster and a very serious incident. But then, no, they're trying very hard to say he incited it. And I know his speech was, you know, very fiery, but that's just how he is. You can't help what people do. Well, I will say, he took a little long to come out and like try to quell it, though. I will say that I can give them that. That's true. Over the course of that day.
Well, I don't even want to make it about Trump because I want to keep it on your experiences and kind of, you know, like here's my opinion on Trump. He's no longer president, you know, the same way people said. So it's like everyone has to stop talking about Trump.
Right, I know. And then the right has to, like, don't start that for the next 4 years. Biden's not my president. Everyone sounds like children. If he's your president, you know, it is what it is. He won, and you know, that's what our democratic process is.
And we should all be hoping that the country does well. I mean, again, the same kind of childish behavior of like hoping for an economic recession under Trump that I heard people saying should not apply. You know, you should hope the country does well, regardless of who the president is, because the American people suffer.
Exactly.
But I just want to hear, so, you know, just as deep as you can get into it, kind of like how you saw things getting bad. You're saying that you saw use of force change. Like just everything that you're witnessing. Are you seeing a lot of police officers stepping down? Was it a shock to people that you stepped down, or were there other officers? You know, are you happier since being outside of the force? Just tell us.
I'm much happier because it's just always a very chaotic environment there. But I mean, in certain ways. But yeah, I think they're going to start leaving, and they're basically kind of like starting to make police more and more impotent. Is how I see it. Is like, you know, I get it. We can't shoot everyone we see, but at the same time, I want to be safe. I don't want to go on a call and I have some violent domestic and you want me to sit here and try to like talk everyone down. You can't. And they, you know, they're pushing this de-escalation training. And I understand that, but it's like, sometimes you can't.
Did they really give you like a 20-page book on how to not harass a transgender person?
Yes. They were called e-learnings, and we had to sit on a computer. We could sit at any computer. It wasn't a class or anything, but yeah, it was quite extensive. I remember reading it. It took forever, and then you have to take a test on it and get 100% or whatever. And so yeah, it's just like, yeah, don't, you know. And I get it. I understand that segment of society needs protection. And but yes, they did.
Were there other things like that happened? Like, do you have other examples of things that you were like, what am I doing? What does this have to, like, I get it, but this is a little bit extreme. Like,
I mean, I would just say with that pointing a taser thing, I mean, we call it a use of force. We have to do that. And it was like 20 pages long. And I'm like, for pointing a taser at somebody, like, you know, and that takes time. So that's more time off the street because we have to sit here and write up everything extensively now because you pointed a taser at someone, not the gun, but the taser. So, you know,
so you just kept
started getting a little ridiculous.
Yes, you just started noticing more and more of these things, and they kept happening and happening and happening. And then
did
it happen in one day where you're like, I can't be a police officer anymore? Because I just noticed in a lot of the officers I talk to, they're like, man, there's a lot of police officers stepping down. And then you hit me up and you're like, I'm not a police officer anymore.
Well, because, also, I mean, you have, our internal discipline system, and it's getting more and more, like, I guess, petty, if you want to say, because they have to entertain everything now. So, and they are. And then body worn camera it's helping, but it's not, because then they'll go through your footage. And, we had a sergeant who got charged with, I forget what originally, and they like went back through all his body worn camera footage and found other stuff to charge him with. And it's like, okay, you're always going to find something, dude. You have a camera on you 24/7. Is everyone going to be perfect? No. But, it got crazy. And you're starting to see more and more of that. Like, I had a friend, he got charged with telling someone, I'm done with you. Oh yeah, I'm ending the conversation. I've said that same thing to someone before. It's a firm, it's not, it's not the most soft or gentle, but it's not, I can say it's like super, it's courtesy.
What do you mean? You actually got people get charged, officer, for saying, I'm done with you?
Yes.
Like a disciplinary charge?
Yes.
For saying, I'm done with you?
Yes.
Okay.
They said it's discourtesy.
I mean, that's another interesting example of...
That's what I mean. So that's another element to this. It's not just the city administration. It's its own, like, internal, because of DOJ. They're just entertaining any and everything to jam an officer up. And officers are getting tired of that.
Do you think that the BLM riots that happened this past year kind of pushed things and escalated things exponentially further at a much faster rate than they would have otherwise? And kind of...
Oh, yeah, of course, because they gain more power, unfortunately, and traction. So hey, they might get their wish. We won't have police at all in 50 years because no one's going to want to be one.
That's scary. I mean, and I actually do see...
You kind of feel like you come to work and one of your hands, like, in turn doing your job is like handcuffed behind your back. So you're only like half an officer because, so it's kind of like, what do you want? Because Baltimore had, I think 347 murders last year in a COVID year, no less. And that's up. I think the lowest I've ever experienced there was 194. So we're rising. The murder rate has been on a rise since 2015. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like you have to balance your crime rate and what you want done. See, that's what I mean. Criminals know we're getting basically
handicapped.
Yes, exactly. And they know that. Criminal element knows that. That's why everyone has a camera phone as soon as you're arresting someone, because they're going to find some way to bait you and get some money, and Baltimore pays out all the time. People sue over anything.
So you felt like they were empowering the criminals, disempowering the police, implementing also from politicians, but even internally in your own police stations, starting to implement these kind of ideals that are just making it impossible for you to do your job, until finally you got to a breaking point. You're like, I can't do this anymore.
I just didn't want to. I was never going to stay like 25 years, but some people leave. I just felt like, it's not really worth it at this point, because now they used to just fire you when you did something, but now they want to send you to jail.
Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Want to come after your family now. They fire your family members. They destroy your public image.
Right.
It's not enough just to even put you in jail. They go after people's wives and say, look, their wife should be fired from their job. Their kids should be bullied. Like, yeah, it's really out of control. Like, when you really deep dive into it and you see some of it happen.
It's getting crazy. I mean, I don't know what the state of policing will be in, 20 years. It'd be interesting to see, because I don't, I guess they'll have us like England. We won't carry guns.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
So after the riots in the Capitol, which we all agree, bad.
Yeah.
Very bad. But Biden came out and said this is an example of like systemic racism in America, because if they were Black, the response would have been much worse. And he kind of implied that the police, and so everyone was like, what he implied was that the police are so racist that if they had been Black protesters, they would have been held to a different standard and they probably would have been killed. Kamala Harris said the same thing. AOC, this kind of became a trend for a while.
That's always a trend. You see that in police incidents all the time. I'll see comments on like police shootings. Well, if he had been Black, they wouldn't have, because they took a white man. And I hear this about Dylan Roof. Take him, for instance. He shot up the church. Mm-hmm. And they were like, well, if he would have been Black, they wouldn't have taken him. I'm like, They took, let's say, who was black, and John Allen Muhammad was taken into custody just fine, and he was the Beltway sniper.
Mm-hmm. No, there's countless examples.
Huh?
Oh, there's countless examples. Of course, it's
right. I'm like, singular case. I hate those hypothetical scenarios. Well, if they had been black, it's nothing you can ever prove. So why say it?
Well, what scares me there is that what Biden, so our president, our VP, multiple Democrats, what they all came out and essentially said, and people were like, oh no, they're trying to support black people. I'm like, no, actually what they're saying is that police are racist. What they're saying is that police are so inherently racist. It has nothing to do with black people. They're actually saying the police force is systemically and inherently racist and kills black people given the opportunity, because when white people protested, they actually did. They shot a woman in the neck who was unarmed, a white army veteran. So I don't know how much more force should have been used.
Is that the one that trying to breach the door?
Yeah, she climbed through a window or something, and the guy shot her in the neck.
Yeah, she got killed. Yeah.
And they won't even release the details. All of a sudden, that's not police brutality to them. Like, so there's such hypocrisy. My question to you is like, so, you've left the police force. We now have a president who believes the police force is systemically racist. Do you think that is going to, and he said it multiple times, it's not like this is a controversial thing for him to say, he's saying it all the time. Do you think that's going to have a more of a negative impact on the police force and kind of more of these?
Absolutely. I'm sure he's going to enact, I hear the rumor, like federal law enforcement standards or something like that. Yeah, it's going to get worse. If he's talking like that, absolutely.
I mean,
systemically racist. I don't know how you can make that argument about anything. I mean, the criminal justice system, it's not really a race issue. Like I said, it's more of a class issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, minorities tend to be poor. So yeah, they can't afford the best lawyers and things like that. So you do have a lot of issues that intersect with each other, but it's not a blatant racism. It's other kinds of issues. But yeah, I think he's going to just probably drastically alter the state of policing.
Well, then, I mean, on that end, I think it's good you got out. And I think that it's sad, but there's a lot of other police who are getting out. And like you said, in 2050, I have no idea where policing is going to be. I mean, is there anything you want to say that you went through or experienced or that kind of put you over the, anything you want to just mention? It's all up to you. This is your time.
Oh, I mean, about what, why I left?
Why you left, or just what went on in like what I find most fascinating is the stuff I didn't know. Like I had no idea about that 20-page document you had to read. I had no idea that pointing a taser at someone. I had no idea that saying I'm done with you is a discipline. I'm guaranteeing most people watch.
Well, we didn't either. So yeah, you find this out when you get a set of papers from internal and you have to go down there and sign your papers, and it's some statement. Wow. Yeah, he's a buddy of mine. He told me this. I was just in shock that they're getting to that level, and they are. So, it is what it is. But yeah, who wants to keep going through that? See, that's the point with policing. You talk about officers and certain stressors. The street is the street, and dealing with the external side of things is one thing, but then you have to come back to that and deal with all that. So, you talk about officers and their stress levels, and maybe that does lead to excessive force. Maybe that does lead to them doing things that they shouldn't, alcohol issues, things like that, because they're constantly under stress from both sides of the fence.
Yeah, they have no peace.
So, right.
They come back from a stressful, dangerous environment of being out on the street, which you were going through, especially in Baltimore.
Right.
And then you come back to your precinct and you're getting it over there too, saying like, you can't do this, you can't do that. You're gonna go to jail if you do this. Read this 20-page document on this.
Yeah, right. So it's just a constant state of stress, no matter what. So I think it is, you have officers that have we had one that died, unfortunately. He was a real nice guy. He died a couple months ago, I think. He died of a heart attack, and he was fairly young. Why do you think officers have blood pressure issues constantly?
Mm-hmm.
Very pervasive heart attacks at early ages.
Suicide.
Suicide, exactly.
Among the highest rate out of any group is police officers.
Yes, you do. Exactly. Suicides. Exactly. But I don't think they think holistically like that. They just don't care. They run their system, like instead of training properly, they train via discipline instead of training right the first time. So it's just what they do. It's interesting. It's a sight to behold. Have you ever read Catch-22?
No.
It's a classic. It's about it's a satire, but it's about like bureaucratic like idiocy, and but it has to do with a military plane unit in World War II. And I could probably equate a lot of police agencies, not just my old one, to that book.
Okay, so maybe it's worth reading Catch 22. And then,
well, yeah, it's a satire, so it's like they do things like so the Catch 22 actually what it refers to is that you would have to be crazy to fly the number of missions that they're flying. But if you try to say you're crazy to get out of it, they'll say you're actually sane and you're not getting out of it. That's why it's called Catch 22. But they do like screwed up things, like a pilot showed up to check in to the admin section or whatever, and they told him, we need you up in the air right now. And he got killed. But they command refused to deal with his death because they said, well, he never actually checked in here. So they just left his stuff there and didn't acknowledge his death at all, and left his stuff, and people just started pilfering it. It's a lot of this stuff. It's supposed to be funny. It's a satire, but a lot of dark stuff happens too.
And yeah, and you feel like it's sadly creeping up. Satire is
right.
reality.
Sadly, I can relate to some of the things I read in here. Like they send out these messed up form letters where they don't bother to change them. They're like, dear Mrs., Mr., Mrs., or Miss, we're sorry for the loss of your son / brother / father, where they're supposed to like change it, but they just don't bother. And I can relate to.
That's happening?
No, I'm talking about in a book.
No, but I thought you were saying you can relate to that, like as if that's.
No, well, just an incident, something like that, like comparable, it's kind of funny.
All right. Well, your puppy sounds like he's very, very upset that I've stolen your time here.
Oh no, yeah, he's fine. My roommate's up there. Sorry.
No, it's all good. No, this was incredibly enlightening. I mean, I didn't know any of this stuff. So, I mean, unless there's anything else you want to say, I think like a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this.
I hope so. I mean, like I said, I love policing. I love the department. But I just want everyone to be safe, citizens, us. And I feel like slowly, no one's going to be safe at some point. The citizens need police, and most of them acknowledge it. They do. We're still getting 911 calls, and so making the police, handicapped is not going to help anyone. But you notice the people that want to do this, like, okay, well, Biden, will that apply to your Secret Service detail? Because you have police. So why should you be safe and no one else is? And I don't like that kind of hypocrisy.
Well,
all the politicians and leftists that talk about defund the police, whatever, you'll see someone armed standing right next to them. So they want to feel safe, but they don't want anyone else to. So that's the things I have a problem with.
Well, that's a good point. The hypocrisy is pretty intense.
Right. So yeah, but yeah, this has been great. It's nice to talk to you again.
You too. Thank you so much. I'll pause it now, and we'll just keep talking.
Okay. All right.